Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the Baltimore City Council Health, Environment, and Technology Committee, and the meeting is now called to order. I am Danielle McCrae, Chair of the committee and Councilwoman representing the 2nd District. In attendance, we have members of the committee, Councilman Mark Conway from the 4th District, Councilwoman Felicia Porter from the 10th District, Councilman James Torrance from the 7th District, Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer from the 5th District, and other council members that we have in attendance would be Councilman Zeke Cohen from the 1st District. We also have from the Mayor's Office, Nina Themelis, and from the Council President's Office, we have Matt Stegman and Nikki Thompson. And last, also in attendance, we have Matthew Peters, staff to the committee. Before we get started, we have just a couple of ground rules. Please stay muted until you are recognized by the chair. Mute yourself when you are not speaking. Before you speak, please identify yourself, the agency or organization you are with, and your position. Please speak slowly and clearly. After you finish speaking, please mute yourself again until you are recognized by the chair. We do ask that committee members and city agency officials keep their video on for the duration of the hearing unless there are technical difficulties preventing you from doing so. And this is just for transparency's sake, so members of the public know that we are listening and paying attention. Last, for members of the public, there will be an opportunity for public testimony. You will have 2 minutes each for testimony. The committee today, we are hearing 2 pieces of legislation, Resolution 21-0032R and Bill 21-0049. We are going to start with Resolution 21-0032R, informational hearing, studying the feasibility of a small hauler incentive program for the purpose of inviting representatives from the Department of Finance, the Department of Public Works, and the Department of Health to discuss the feasibility of enacting a small hauler incentive program to better offset illegal dumping and litter in our communities. The hearing format for the resolution is as follows. We will have brief remarks from the sponsor of the resolution, which is Councilwoman Porter. Then we will hear reports from the agencies and give committee members the opportunity to ask questions. After that, we're going to move on to public testimony. At this time, we're going to hear from the resolution sponsor. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair McCrae. So as we are all here today, we are here for the Small Haulers Collaborative. And so we know that there's an estimated 10,000 tons of waste that are illegally dumped on our streets, alleyway, and empty lots of Baltimore City. This unsightly phenomenon negatively impacts the environmental health and property values that results in contamination to soil, surface, and groundwater, and creates tremendous net negative impact outcomes on our community health, crime, and blight within our communities as it relates to illegal dumping. It is with this in mind that I'm holding this informational hearing that aims to understand ways that would strengthen, empower, and include one of our city's most valuable assets in the Department of Public Works to fight against illegal dumping, the small hauler, Baltimore City small hauler. My proposed collaborative would incentivize and activate a force of small business operators acting as a quasi-contracted unit designed to support the city's quick and efficient and proper collection and disposal of waste across the city. So with that in mind, my questions today will be aimed at to see if we can find out the following: that we can decrease and eliminate fees related to the proper disposal of the waste for small haulers. This has precedence based on former Mayor Jack Young's small pilot program of last year. Offer an incentive metric related to the tonnage of waste an individual small hauler collects and disposes of. And lastly, ensures that the waste collected and disposes originating in Baltimore and alleviates the problems of illegal dumping on city residents. This is something that's very near and dear to my district. And so I just want to thank everyone for coming today to talking about this very important matter. This is something that we have to get a grapple on very quickly in Baltimore City. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Porter, and thanks for your leadership. I think it's very important that council members are putting forth innovative and out-of-the-box ideas and bring these resolutions to our committees. We're going to move on to agency reports. And the first agency is going to be the Department of Public Works. And I apologize. We're going to move on and hear from our agency representatives, committee members. I'm just asking that you hold your questions until we have heard from all of the agencies. And at this time, we're going to move on to the Department of Public Works. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Committee members, my name is Marcia Collins. I am the legislative chief of the Department of Public Works. I also have with me here today my coworker Janelle Mummy, as well as our bureau head John Chalmers and Kristen Oldendorf. And we are all available to respond to committee questions. We did file a written report to the committee, and we recognize that we did have a trial small hauler program between March and June in 2020. Of course, this was also the point at which everything was being shut down, metaphorically speaking, for COVID. We ran that program for 3 months, and that program consisted primarily of small haulers being able to utilize the Northwest Transfer Station to dump their loads for free during that 3-month period. Prior to that, only the Quarantine Road landfill was accepting their loads. We tried this for a period of time. I just want to point out that the Northwest Transfer Station is an operational facility that's important to the functioning of solid waste crews who do routine services. That is the curbside collection of waste and of recyclables. We use that location so that they may, once their trucks fill, they may bring their loads over there, dump them, and go. These loads that are dumped there are later put into large roll-offs and taken either to the landfill or the incinerator. This makes it a much more efficient operation for our crews to be able to get back to their routes and complete their activities in the day. When we did the 3-month pilot for the small haulers, there was quite a lot of activity. And it got to the point where we had to relocate the offloading of our recyclables temporarily. While we did this, it was a challenge to accommodate the activity. We have large haulers, small haulers going to that location, as well as our vehicles. And you have to be able to conduct the business in a very safe manner. Trucks are coming, unloading, backing up, and we wanted to make sure everyone was safe. So it did interrupt our operational activities during that period. As I mentioned, that was, I think the small haulers have appreciated that opportunity to use that location, particularly if it's not as convenient to go to Quarantine Road landfill. And they continue to use that location today, but they do pay the tipping fee of $20 per load for that. There is a $3.38 above 1 ton that they pay per 100 tons beyond that. The large haulers who dump pay $67.50. So we did conduct that, and while we wanted to be able to see if there was any impact on illegal dumping due to the COVID, I think that we felt that the data that was gathered during that 3-month period was not going to be all that useful. And while we did have others look at the data, it was agreed that we really couldn't come to any conclusions. We did not necessarily see any change in illegal dumping in that manner. However, we have continued to allow our small haulers to go to that location, and we're able to accommodate them currently, and as well as our operations. We also would like to say that one of the recent announcements that the mayor's office made about cleaning communities was in the community of Chum, Coldstream, Homestead, Montebello in the 14th district. And they are going to be training 3 residents to collect and clean. And we hope that through that training and effort, we will be able to hire those individuals in the long term. But this is also a way to educate communities. We believe strongly that personal responsibility on the part of residents, on all of us, is very important. It is very helpful to have people report actions that they see they believe is illegal dumping. That helps us. But at the end of the day, we receive SRs. We also do proactive cleaning as well. And it's a lot of work. And we would really like to see some strong educational and information outreach to educate and re-educate people about their responsibilities and ours. So I'll leave it there, and we'll answer any questions once the committee is prepared to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. We're going to move on, and actually before we do, I want to recognize Natasha May, who has joined us from the mayor's office. I also see Councilwoman Odette Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Stephanie Murdoch, Legislative Liaison for the Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm joined here today by Jason Hessler, our Deputy Commissioner for Permits and Litigation. Herein reporting on City Council Resolution 210032R, which calls for an informational hearing on the Small Haulers Program. We support the intent of this resolution to better offset illegal dumping and litter in our communities and support local employment opportunities. As you just heard from DPW, the Small Haulers Program as it currently exists is an initiative to make it easier for small commercial haulers to properly dispose of trash, improve their efficiency, reduce instances of illegal dumping, and also to help keep our city clean. It is worth cautioning that such an incentive program could lead to abuse and may be difficult to enforce. There also may be capacity considerations related to the landfill's ability to take on additional waste and a financial impact on the city as well. DHCD would defer to the Department of Public Works in coordination with Finance and Health to determine the need, feasibility, and financial impact of modifying the Small Haulers Program to include the suggestive incentive. We stand by our report in deference to the Department of Public Works, and we stand by ready to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Stephanie. We're going to now hear from the Department of Health.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul Nibber on behalf of the Baltimore City Health Department, and also thank you, fellow committee members. The Baltimore City Health Department, unfortunately, because of the onset of COVID, was not able to take a long look at the small hauler incentive program. Unfortunately, we were short-staffed, and then there also happened to be a technical glitch wherein we couldn't tell when small haulers were actually registering. And so with that in mind, we couldn't tell you whether or not the incentive program actually brought in additional individuals from the community that wanted to actually engage in this activity. So with that in mind, we are supportive of initiatives like the small hauler incentive program. We do agree that dumping is an issue that really hurts our communities, and we do want to see what comes of this conversation. And so we have put forward a favorable report just because we want to engage in this conversation. We want to understand what we can do to curb this activity. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the Department of Finance.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Aaron Moore, Assistant Budget Director from BVMR. I'm going to talk just briefly about the fiscal impact of the proposed legislation here. So in total, the impact is about a $3.6 million cost to the city. This is due to the payments that we will be required to make to individuals, and also the lost revenue that we would expect from the existing program. A couple other notes that we found in our research that I wanted to briefly highlight was that we were unable to identify any other jurisdictions that provide this type of payment. Typically, when this type of service is performed, it is with a formal contract by the law department and with the agency. Second, we also noted some concerns in our other considerations that about the enforcement mechanisms on preventing collection from outside the city and disposing at the landfill. And in addition to that, the increased volume we would expect potentially may impact other operational costs over time if there's increased usage of the Northwest Transfer Station. With that, I will defer, of course, to the other agencies that are present today and be available to answer questions on the fiscal impact. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the Mayor's Office, Performance and Innovation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dan Heimowitz, Director of the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today for this hearing. As you know, one of the main functions of our office is through our CityStat team to serve as the performance management team for the mayor. CityStat recently relaunched CleanStat, which is the meeting which we have that focuses on the work of city government agencies responsible for improving city cleanliness. Typically, CityStat develops performance management systems and metrics for government services. Those services. So, if, for example, there were to be a new incentive program for small haulers, we would seek to work with stakeholders to agree on the best ways to consider the effectiveness of that program, most likely through that CleanStat meeting, which we have restarted. In terms of this potential program, we defer to the responses of the Department of Public Works during this informational hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have our Law Department.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Vic Turvila, Chief Solicitor for the City Law Department. The Law Department will stand by its report and is prepared to approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency as a legal way of exploring these important issues.
I'm going to open, and thank you, Victor. I'm going to open the floor to committee members for questions. Committee members, please signal or use the raise hand function if you have a question for an agency. At this time, we're actually going to start with the bill sponsor for the first round of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for submitting your reports about the feasibility of this Small Haulers Collaborative Program. I'm encouraged by the level of dedication that you all in your respective agencies have dedicated to this program already. I have a few questions, particularly for DPW, and it's a series of questions that I think will better explore some of the education and re-education activities that you mentioned in relation to illegal dumping. And so for the previous small haulers pilot program of last year, how many small haulers did you have to participate in this particular program?
Good morning. My name is John Chalmers. I'm the Bureau Head for the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Solid Waste. And I can give you some stats. So as a result of the small haulers pilot program at the Northwest Transfer Station, for the month of March, we received about 6,800 visits. Of those visits, paying haulers was about 4,900. Existing permit holders, 2,509. And free resident dumps was 1,925. There were 14 vehicles that we had to redirect to Quarantine Road landfill because they did not meet the minimum qualifications as a small hauler.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chalmer. And I just want to publicly say how helpful you have been with regard to solid waste throughout the city, sir. I want to redirect a little bit because one of the issues that Ms. Collins had brought up was related to the education and re-education of illegal dumping. I just want us to imagine here a little bit if we could even just take 2,500 of those small haulers and use them as environmental champions and environmental educators that would help DPW educate on the dangers and public health impact of illegal dumping. Have you all engaged those, say, 2,500 small haulers in those type of community outreach and education activities?
I would say at the beginning of the program, we did disseminate information to the small haulers, the do's and don'ts of illegal dumping, the impact that it has on the city as a whole, environmentally and fiscally. And this is one of the reasons why we wanted to open up the transfer station to try to give folks, to make it a little easier for them. So we did, we gave that information out at the time.
Okay, but it was nothing further than just providing information to those particular small haulers. So I'm thinking of like a comprehensive education program that's sponsored by DPW and these small haulers as environmental entrepreneurs and environmental champions to push out that information, educate the community.
Not specifically, to the small haulers to push this information out, but we do have a Office of Communications that routinely go out to community meetings and push out the do's and don'ts of best waste management practices. But yet, to answer your question, not specifically to small haulers.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, may I ask another question, ma'am?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. And this question is related to the Department of Finance. You mentioned a $3.6 million impact on the city's budget in your report. Can you talk about how that actual number is juxtaposed to the actual 311 requests that we are handling currently in the city? And so that includes salary, gas, and different things that employees of DPW or costs that DPW is actually incurring as it relates to the 16,000 illegal dumping, 16,000 kind of illegal dumping 311 requests that we've seen thus far since January, I believe.
Sure. So I would have to refer back to the budget for that particular activity. I believe it's Service 661. Not familiar with the activity number, but it's called public right-of-way cleaning. And that would give us the cost of that service, if you will, to perform those requests. I can provide, we'll follow up with the council with that exact number. Typically a DPW employee, I believe there are about 116 of them in that particular division that's budgeted, and they each make about $40,000 and probably an additional 20,000 or so in OPCs, and then of course materials, supplies, et cetera, to get the job done. So there is, a significant cost there with, over 100 employees and benefits and materials and supplies. But this 3.6 million in particular, it's not, I would say this to give it a little bit additional context, it's not just the 3.6 million. So the 3.6 is the 2.4 to pay individuals for the percentage that we would expect, and then also the lost revenue. However, the city has long-term implications to think about because the landfill is filling up and running out of space. And that's where these materials are, partially where these materials are going. And there's a cost to landfill expansion and all the other intangible things and indirect effects that also affect this if we were to see increased volume from this program, which could also increase the payment amount. So I just wanted to provide that context. So we'll follow up with you on the exact cost of that activity and that service. But it's not just the 3.6, but also other indirect costs and intangible costs that we may face as well.
Sure. And you know, thank you for that. I would be interested to see how that number changes with those indirect costs as it relates to the 160 employees and other indirect costs as it relates to this program, because I think it's very important to note that DPW spends an enormous amount of time going out to communities to pick up illegal dumping, to pick up trash, whereby they can be focused on other important activities that would streamline and maximize the efficiency of their already strained agency. So thank you for that, Erin. Madam Chair, I'll save my other questions for another round, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We're going to move to Councilman Yitzi Schleifer. And Councilman Schleifer, your hand is raised if you have any questions. Now is your opportunity. We're going to go ahead and move on to Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to actually follow up. This wasn't originally my first question, but I want to follow up on the question that Councilman Porter had, understanding the costs, understanding the lost revenue. As we think about DPW and the work that they put into responding to complaints, how do we think about, this is the question for finance, how do we think about that break even? At what point can this program, if structured correctly, reduce the operational costs of having trucks, having people respond randomly to SRs? How do we think about that from a financial perspective?
So I would frame it this way. In our budget process, we produce, a current level of service budget. That's our first iteration, if you will. And that maintains, the current operations, whatever, inflation or other costs may occur. And so with that, there is we expect to do this service or complete the service at a certain level and maintain that level. And that is what's budgeted per the city's expectations. So I would add to that additionally, we do think about, performance measures, how the agency is performing, what additional resources are necessary, and agencies have the opportunity to make enhancement requests that could improve upon those performance metrics. So it is, as we go through the budget process, we do our first iteration enhancement requests, that agencies are able to make with us, in addition to, if there are cost savings. We're not only the Budget Bureau, but we're also the Management Research Bureau. And we have produced a significant number of past and also current reports as well, that some are internal, that we have shared with DPW about potential cost savings and opportunities to mitigate. So I think there is a delicate balance that, we do dedicate resources to every year, since this is always, a primary concern of all the folks in the city, not only just for cleanliness, but for health and safety and the appearance of our city as well, too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Before I go on, I want to thank the sponsor for coming up with this idea. It sounds like it's still a little bit early, but I think changing the incentive goes a long way towards tackling what seems like an insurmountable problem that we've dealt with forever. And when I think about this, in the finance report, you guys brought up a lot of really good points about the early structure. One, that we don't have the ability one, that we don't have the ability to prevent this program from attracting waste out of our traditional waste stream, our collection scheme. But then also we don't, on its face, have an ability to prevent the collection of trash outside of Baltimore City and pay folks for bringing trash to us. And I think that was a really thoughtful point. I appreciated that. You suggested in your report as well, and also just now in your re-reported that if we had like some sort of contractual or ticket system, that we could conceptually close that gap. And it got my mind running about sort of the gig economy and how we can leverage the gig economy. We put these jobs out there. We know that we have these complaints. If we were able to issue certain tickets for folks to tackle and prove that they've done so, we could then theoretically close that gap. So if you don't mind, can you elaborate on what the gaps are with regards to addressing those issues? And I definitely think we can begin to think about how we can close those gaps as you talk through them.
So I would particularly defer to DPW on the more operational aspects of that. And I do want to follow up with one point. So the cost for this service is $13.8 million per year. So you have that for reference. I think, and to address, the points that you just mentioned in particular, we are amenable to filling in the gaps with contractors. We do that for mowing. We do that for many city services. I think it's about developing the appropriate enforcement and control mechanisms internally, because there is a potential here for costs to spiral without that lack of internal control. And that could cause great fiscal harm to the city, which is already in a delicate balance. I hope that addresses your question sufficiently.
Yes. If we had, for instance, a ticket system where the city determined that we would focus on, let's say, we put out 100 tickets, we would know roughly what that cost would be. We could theoretically control that cost and control the likelihood of picking up unknown trash or taking trash out of the traditional waste stream. Would that be the case?
I think you're describing similar to what we do for mowing. I'll defer to John and DPW on that.
Okay.
So, and again, John Chalmers, Bureau Head for Solid Waste. In our property management division, we do augment our services with several contractors where we provide them with cleaning SRs to abate for us. They're listed as category 1, 2s, and 3s. For the most part, the contractors are in a position to handle the category 1 and some of the category 2s. So that's how we monitor that program. We provide them with work orders. They go out, they abate the service requests, they provide before and after photographs, and that's how they assist us. I like this conversation. I like where we're going. I just want to make sure that we look at this from both ends of the spectrum, changing behavior and cleaning up. We have to do that simultaneously to really get a handle on illegal dumping.
Thank you both.
And I just want to add, again, Marsha Collins, DPW, I just want to add that, of course, that carries a cost that is not currently provided to the Bureau of Solid Waste. So it would be, a new budgetary item that would have to be added to the process. I think that because these small haulers are to be registered, we would want to involve the health department in any program if this were to be considered. So it would, and I suspect HCD might have an interest as well. So I think that any consideration of a program of this regard and doing a contractual relationship, which we would need to have, to do this type of program would require more than just DPW. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think one piece that's been missing from this conversation, it was touched on briefly, was enforcement. DPW spoke about educational and outreach that needs to be done, but can we speak to what has enforcement look like, not pre-pandemic, but during COVID-19, enforcement of illegal dumping? I believe that would be is that DHCD?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Stephanie Murdoch. And again, I'm joined here by Jason Hessler, so he can jump in if needed. So for dumping on private property, that's something that our code enforcement inspectors would take a look at. For dumping in the public right-of-way, on public property, that's vacant lots, that's something our special investigations unit would investigate. And right now we have 12 special investigations unit investigators that receive reports generated through the 311 system from individual community members or elected officials, or just in their proactive daily duties. So after they are actively investigating sites where illegal dumping occurs. Some of the methods they use to investigate the illegal dumping include cameras. We have around 90 cameras that are placed throughout the city to try to catch illegal dumpers in the act. We also have investigations into the actual debris that has been dumped to try to find identifying information, to find out the individual responsible for the dumping. And then anytime that we do have enough evidence to bring charges against an individual found that has been found dumping, we do so. So the pandemic has limited our efforts in a sense that early on in the pandemic, we had less investigators in the field. And then when we did return to the field, the actual sorting through the bags of trash was not something that we had our inspectors doing. So, hopefully we'll return to those more thorough investigations at some point in the near future, but we are successful in catching illegal dumpers. Some of the challenges that the Special Investigations Unit faces include the fact that sometimes the debris that's found isn't necessarily linked to the person whose name is on the Amazon box or what have you that's found in the debris. Also, our cameras are motion censored, so finding the right location for those cameras is really essential. They can be tripped off by, just pedestrian traffic and such. So I guess, Jason, if you want to jump in and add anything around our enforcement end of things.
Yeah, I just wanted to just clarify one point. While we do have 12 investigators in the Special Investigations Unit, their responsibilities vary beyond just illegal dumping. So on any given day, there are usually 5 investigators that are actively working either the cameras or open investigations or service requests or other complaints coming in about illegal dumping. But everything Stephanie said was right on point.
Okay, so just to make sure that I understand, we have 5 investigators actively working at a time monitoring the 90 cameras?
Yeah, well, usually it's 3 investigators that are assigned to the cameras and then 2 other investigators that are responding to service requests specifically for illegal dumping. Chief Booker and the Housing Inspections, Property Maintenance Division, they are also dealing with sanitation related issues that are usually more residential based, so improper disposal, high grass and weeds, cans not out or trash not properly stored, or non-collection days. So we handle a wide array of sanitation related issues, but stuff that is specifically called in as illegal dumping would come to the Special Investigations Unit for them to go out and respond to, as well as monitor the cameras.
Okay, I just want to ask you guys this last question. Stephanie, one thing that you mentioned is that the department is successful in enforcing, in the enforcement side of illegal dumping or catching people who are illegally dumping. This is a simple question. This is for my constituents. If my constituents are reporting illegal dumping that they see, what do you guys need to make sure that you can successfully cite these people? Do you need a video? Do you need a license plate? Do you need a successful description or picture of the person doing it? This is something that comes often to us, and we want to make sure that we are helping with the situation and that you guys are able to follow through. So what do you need to cite somebody or prosecute somebody for illegal dumping?
This is Jason again. I'll jump in. As much identifying information as possible helps. So we will respond to all 311 complaints in relation to illegal dumping and do our best to try and determine who's responsible. If a constituent has video that shows the dumping occurring and we can either identify the person or a vehicle, we will then open an investigation to follow up and track down who's responsible for that dumping. So investigators will make contact with the constituent and retrieve that video. Depending on where the dumping is, we may need the assistance of that constituent. If the dumping occurred on private property, they would need to assist in testifying in court that the person that dumped did not have permission. If it was dumped in a street or alley, that's not necessary. So anytime that we have sufficient evidence and it makes sense to bring criminal charges, we do that, and it's mainly off of the cameras that we have installed in known dumping areas that we monitor daily, really. But we have gotten footage from residents, businesses, other people that we're able to use to do enforcement through the district court. And when we don't have sufficient evidence for a district court case, but we can still identify a responsible party, that's when we would go forward with a Environmental Control Board citation for illegal dumping, which I think is another bill we're going to talk about this morning.
Thank you. We're going to move to Councilman Torrance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have many questions, but more than likely they will be sent in email. But my first question in terms of budget. One of the things I've seen from looking historically at the budget for the division within solid waste is that routinely they've been routinely funded on general funds. It's okay, Jace, come up. Okay. Sorry. Have been routinely funded on general funds and often have taken cuts. Is there a way that we can recommend that doesn't occur, because that then interferes with actual service delivery?
I would really hate to answer your question with a question, but I would like more information on which reductions you've seen in the solid waste budget. Overall, the solid waste budget has increased typically every year. Now, sometimes there are shifts of resources between the services, but that is an internal agency decision when they submit their budget proposals to our office. There have been some reductions, but they've been more or less through the pandemic or directly pandemic related. But we recently added $2.8 million for 37 new positions, and also some additional resources in other areas of the budget that are in our preliminary budget for this year. So I would just request some additional information on which specific areas.
I can do that as an offline meeting between DPW and your office because I just want to understand where cuts have been made. Because what I see is we have the budget from the agency perspective and then from broadly the mayor's office. And then things happen during the year and then we restructure and transfer funds to other accounts. I just want to know what the prioritization is because for me, I'm going to be straightforward about it in this hearing is that my constituents see that there needs to be a focused effort on just doing cleanups more. And to the credit of DPW on this, like I can see it now, like we've seen tickets in my office build up and they keep coming, they keep coming, they keep coming, and they're small staff. So the question is, how do we create more capacity in our agency? And I think that either through the small haulers program or other initiatives, I think that this is something that has to be a conversation that has to be more prioritized in terms of funding, because after a while, it's going to become an issue that we just have to throw money at. And it's going to have to be one that we have to be strategic in how we throw that money at. And my other question is more related to the cameras for housing. My question is related to those cameras. Like, do we have any cloud-based solutions rather than having persons monitor cameras?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the monitoring cameras.
Yes. Do we have any cloud-based solutions rather than having persons monitor cameras?
Yeah, I mean there are cameras that are available that you would have cellular service. So it's not so much that it's cloud-based, but you had cellular service where you could monitor them off-site, pull them up and see what's going on. However, anytime there's a dumping, and some of the dumping doesn't actually occur directly in front of the camera, but the camera catches the vehicle coming in and leaving and the materials, you still need to document the site, go through the materials and build your case. So we don't, if it's a apartment complex or shopping center or residential area, residents installing their own monitoring cameras, either hardwired or otherwise, and having a cloud-based system or something of that nature is great, and we'll take that video from them if should they capture something. But for the areas that we're looking at, these are usually out of the way places, so the cameras are battery operated, motion sensing, and also at risk of theft or damage. So we've gone more of the lower tech avenue so that the cost if we do lose a camera to theft or damage, it's not that great. We can replace the camera as necessary. There's not ongoing costs on a monthly basis for the service to be able to access them. Because if we see something, we're still going to have to go out to these sites anyway. So, and we often learn a lot of things by being out in the neighborhood, and we see dumping across. The dumping has moved, so now they're not dumping where the camera is, so the camera has to be adjusted. So I don't know that there really would be much to be gained from not being out in the field monitoring these cameras on a regular basis.
Madam Chair, if I may have a follow-up question.
You may.
My follow-up, Mr. Hessler, is do we have agents working on weekends? That's the other question, because what I'm seeing is a large number of my reports for illegal dumping are occurring on weekends in my district, particularly, especially in the Rosemont area, Sandtown, Winchester area. We're seeing that they're dumping on weekends in remote areas where there are no eyes. So I just wanted to see.
Yeah, no, we generally do not have people working on weekends. If there's special cases, one of the other tasks of the Special Investigations Unit is they're members of the Social Club Task Force, so they're working overtime on Friday nights and sometimes Saturday nights with the Social Club Task Force. So we have people, when needed, that we can assign them for specific things, but we don't have people sit and monitor sites. That was an old practice that was very outdated and extremely unsuccessful, and that's where the cameras come in. So if somebody is captured, caught in the act of dumping, that would be a 911 call. and the police would respond, and then we could get involved on the back end with following up on the investigation and taking over the prosecution. And we do have those relationships and that does occur, but the investigators are used to respond to the 311s and then also proactively check the cameras and the sites. And if we get locations, like the community or you or somebody comes to us and says, hey, here's an area where dumping is occurring, we'll evaluate it to see if the cameras will work there. The cameras don't always work in every location. There needs to be a place to mount them. There needs to be lower legal traffic in order to capture the illegal activity. So we'll evaluate the situation. Sometimes, we just had one the other day that came from the mayor's office. We're not going to be installing a camera, but rather we're working with DOT and DPW to get the area cleaned, some vehicles removed, and the area blocked off. And we believe that by just blocking off the access, which nobody really needs access to, will prevent the dumping from occurring in that area. So our investigators will evaluate the areas to see if fencing or lighting or other things might be put into play to be more defensive instead of just prosecuting or citing.
Thank you.
We're going to move back to the bill sponsor. Councilwoman Porter, I know you had a few additional questions.
I do. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This question is for DCHD. Can you elaborate where the 90 cameras are in Baltimore City? And can you specifically, if you do know that where they are, can you specifically name or share the number of cameras in districts 6, 7, 9, and 10?
I don't have that in front of me, but we can put that together and provide that to you. We don't post or share the location of the cameras because we don't want them to disappear or
for sure.
start dumping in other places outside of the cameras. But we've provided that in the past, so we can get with your office and anyone else that's interested to give you like the general area.
Sure, and if you could also share the visual acuity of the cameras. One of the issues that that I'm seeing, that I've been talking, with a few agency people about, just the level and the specificity of the cameras to catch license plates. So if you can share that as well.
Sure.
My next question has to do with special investigators. If you could share the percentage of requests that special investigators have to do in relation to illegal dumping. So what's the percentage of illegal dumping, or quote unquote, any like illegal dumping related to bulk trash or anything? Can you share the percentage of work that special investigators have to deal with on a monthly basis per se?
I don't know if I could do a percentage off the top of my head, but we get between 7,000 and 10,000 in a normal year service requests for illegal dumping that they respond to. And then the cameras are being checked on a rotation. So 3 people are going out every day to check the cameras and cycle through them. So every camera usually gets hit twice a week, sometimes more, depending on what's going on. And that's 5 out of 12 people every week working on illegal dumping activity. We also do zoning investigations. We do what's called skip tracing, but searching for property owners in relation to housing code violations. And we do enforcement for the false alarm, burglar alarm program, registration and licensing of rental properties and non-owner occupied properties. And then any kind of special assignments that come up, like if we have a hoarding situation or the social club task force.
Sure.
Yeah.
So would you say, would it be a fair statement to say that the special investigators are handling a lot of issues, and the percentage of illegal dumping issues may be much larger than what the current special investigation team is able to manage right now?
Yeah, and if I could, oh, sorry, Jason. I just wanted to mention that, illegal dumping comes into the 311 service request system, and it can go to 7 different categories that might be associated with illegal dumping. It could be dirty alleys, that kind of thing. So DPW released their annual report that is for 2020. That's a great breakdown of how these service requests come in and what agencies they're routed to. And we're also happy to share and work with DPW to share that with the council.
Thank you. And then my last question has to relate to blocking off access. So in District 10, we've had this one chronic dumping site, which is 1201 James Street. Stephanie, we have spoken about that particular dumping site for a long time now. Can you share what the process is for like fencing or blocking off those access points that are known for illegal dumping?
We would normally look into the ownership, who's responsible for the property, whether it's private or city. If it's city, what agency, evaluate the ins and outs. So, this one particular example I gave, there is only one in and out to the area. The area is actually controlled by DOT. It's under the JFX, and nobody has any business going under there. There's no like storage sheds or other things. We have some other spots that are blocked off because in a similar way, like we could mount a camera, but people could continue down a dead end road. We were able to work with DOT to block off the road so that people stop. And if they dump in front of the camera and we catch them. Often I have to work with other agencies in coordinating it, whether it's DGS, DOT, DPW, and we'll come up with a recommendation and try to make it happen. If it's a private area, we may make a recommendation to an apartment complex owner or somebody else as to what they can do. Often we'll get complaints about like dumping around dumpsters. I'll say like you don't have any cameras installed, you don't have proper lighting, your dumpster is sitting out there next to the street saying, might as well put a sign on it that says dump here. Let's move it back, let's fence it, let's cover it up. Educate your tenants on proper disposal so they're not piling a bag, because we do know like trash attracts trash. So once one piece comes out, dozens other come out.
Sure. And so along with that, that data point related to the cameras, if you could share the fencing or blocking off access metrics for 6, 7, 9, and 10. Do you have that information available, or could you add that information?
I'm not sure I could get that information. It's not, I don't think we have.
It would be a work order.
Yeah, we'll work with DOT as well, because they have the greening and fencing program that a lot of communities utilize to try to target illegal dumping or just make nice places for their community. So we'll see what kind of data we can pull on that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for Stephanie and Jason, I want to make sure that this information is available for all of our committee members. So when we speak about specific councilmanic districts, I know that it's going to be a little bit more work, especially regarding Councilwoman Porter's first questions regarding where the cameras are located and mapping that out. Can we make sure that we are including that information for every councilmanic district and that we're providing it to the committee so I can make sure that all of my committee members have the information? Is there anyone else that has any questions at this time? Any other committee members? Okay. I do want to make sure that we're recognizing Councilman Bullock, a committee member. He has joined the meeting. And at this time, bear with me just a few moments. We are going to move into public testimony. We're going to go ahead and move into council testimony. The committee staff is going to call on members of the public who wish to testify on Resolution 21-0032R. And members of the public, you're going to have 2 minutes each to provide your testimony. If anyone is available to testify, for those who have signed in using a computer, please use the raise hand function to indicate that you wish to testify, and we're going to start with you. Next, we're going to go through all of the users who have called into the hearing. Attendees who called in cannot be identified by name. You will be unmuted by the committee staff one by one. You're going to hear 2 beeps when you're unmuted. And if you wish to testify, please state your name at the beginning of your testimony. If a caller does not wish to provide testimony, they simply need to state that they do not wish to provide testimony after the 2 beeps. If a speaker is inaudible, they will be directed to call back. And Matt's going to take over for the public testimony at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looks like we have Gregory Sawtell first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and thanks, Councilwoman Porter. I'm Greg Sawtell with the Community of Curtis Bay Association, and I'm also an active participant in Baltimore Zero Waste Coalition. I want to thank everybody for all the organizing that went into putting on this informational hearing. Illegal dumping, as we all know, is a critical concern within neighborhoods across Baltimore City. In Curtis Bay, we experience it like most communities in Baltimore do. I just want to organize my comments across 2 main categories. First is prevention and reduction, and then the second is the way that we align incentives to be consistent with our overall vision, strategy, and objectives to move Baltimore away from reliance on burning and burying towards equitable zero waste system. So first, on the prevention and reduction comments, I just wanted to mention a couple things that have come up during the multiple years of zero waste planning and some of the learning that took place that I think could be informative to this overall effort of how do you tackle illegal dumping. It included meetings with other jurisdictions to look at some evidence-driven practices. So one is on a prevention strategy that's focusing on a big part of the illegal dumping waste stream, which is construction and demolition debris. It's a pretty simple concept, which is requiring deposits be paid by haulers of construction and demolition debris that is redeemable upon that material actually being taken to an appropriate facility, ideally a construction and demolition debris recycling facility, as opposed to the city landfill, so that we're saving landfill space, getting C&D materials to their appropriate end location for recycling. The good news is in Maryland, we are seeing an actual uptick in development of C&D recycling facilities. Part of this is in response to the anticipated uptick in infrastructure because of the potential for significant federal spending. So this is a critical step to take that's already received support from Baltimore City Council through the adoption of the Zero Waste Plan. And it seems like this would be a great opportunity to integrate that thinking about how we actually get that done in the context of this illegal dumping conversation. The second one is something we learned from past city council leadership as we were working on the zero waste planning process, which is that Baltimore used to have a relationship with a warehouse owner to store tenants' belongings, tenants who had undergone eviction and their belongings, rather than being tossed out on the curb or in an alley, were stored in a warehouse and then were able to be returned to those tenants so that they weren't completely starting over from scratch. This backs up community level observations that 2 of the major components of the illegal dumping waste stream are C&D materials and furniture from folks that are unfortunately going through eviction. So a concentration on prevention and reduction we think is very, very critical. The second thing, just really quickly, is when we're talking about incentives, we think it's really critical to align those incentives with the outcomes that we want. We don't want to fill up the landfill. So we would just really urge consideration of how to target those incentives so that they're linked to taking materials that are collected to where they belong. Doing that could be difficult because once material is thrown out on the
Mr.
street.
Sawtell, thank you so much for your testimony. Can you just conclude at this time? Thank you.
I was wrapping up. Thank you. Just to say that it's difficult once stuff is dumped to sort it out, but it's not impossible. But it's far preferable to work on prevention of illegal dumping than to respond to it after the fact. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Taurus Barksdale.
Yes, good morning. My name is Taurus Barksdale. I am here to support incentives for small haulers.
I am a small and large hauler of 3 years. I have a prepared statement I would like to read regarding my journey as a hauler and the issues we face daily. In 2017, I became inspired by small haulers after, hiring small haulers to help me clean my dad's house, my late dad's house. I would pay $100 a load. This is before I became before I became in the business. And I started to tell myself, this is a big house. I need to clear it out and demo. I could do this work myself. I just needed a pickup truck. So in 2018, I made the move to purchase my first pickup truck. In my first few months as a hauler, I seen success. I was able to give back to the Baltimore community in many different ways. I started hiring out squeegee entrepreneurs directly off the street. I cleaned alleys. I went around the city doing trash pickups when things were stalled due to the pandemic. I've conducted many community cleanups with the support of small haulers. And after 2 years of being in business, I quit my 9-to-5 job and I became a self-employed business owner just starting from hauling. And I've been able to maintain that success even through a pandemic. Before coming to this hearing, I spent a few days talking to other haulers and getting different perspectives. I learned that the issues are mostly similar, and I wrote down all of the issues that the haulers have. And here are the issues. One of the biggest issues haulers have is the inefficiency to dump in a timely manner. The lines at the Northwest transfer station can be very discouraging. You can be in lines at the Northwest transfer station from an hour, hour and a half. Sometimes it could be possibly 2 hours. And I'm sure many of us have seen the lines at the Northwest transfer station can be wrapped around to Wabash. I believe this committee should consider other dumping options for haulers because the only two locations of Northwest Transfer Station and Curtis Bay are both geographically located at an inconvenience for small haulers. East side haulers have to come all the way to Northwest Baltimore, and Curtis Bay is completely out of the way. The Beltway is, you have to essentially take the Beltway to get to Curtis Bay. Haulers have complained about the distance, the gas mileage, and even the possibility of their trucks not being able to make it that far. As we become more of a transparent government, I believe the transparency should become more apparent in all agencies of Baltimore City. The way haulers are weighed in at the Northwest Transfer Station is not transparent. At the Northwest Transfer Station, haulers are weighed in and not weighed out. The weight of the truck, the drivers, the passengers are all calculated together. This gives an inaccurate weight of the amount of trash that's being dumped. So, in my opinion and other opinions of haulers, we believe there should only be a $20 fee per dump and not other fee that's associated with the weight of the truck because it's simply not accurate. And also, just one of the benefits of going to Curtis Bay is the ability to weigh out, which makes the trash count more accurate. So I believe incentives to get small haulers to go to Curtis Bay would be something great because, small haulers simply don't want to, go to Curtis Bay. Small haulers should also be given the option to pay with a credit or debit card.
Mr. Barksdale, thanks so much. We're so grateful for your testimony. Can you conclude your testimony at this time? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so currently cash is the only form of payment that is accepted. Small haulers are not getting a bill in the mail as large haulers do. Large haulers can get an option of getting their bill. They get it in the mail. Small haulers do not have the option. So essentially, you have to go in the alley, clean up an alley, pick up trash with a pocket full of cash, and that's not smart or safe. So I think considering these options, I believe I am in support of incentives, but I think the committee should also figure out the other issues that small haulers have. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're, again, grateful for your testimony, and thanks as always for providing solutions as well.
Madam Chair, I think that is the last for public testimony.
Okay, so that's going to conclude public testimony. Thanks so much, Matt. Thank you to Mr. Sawtelle and Mr. Barksdale for providing their testimony. Is there a motion to recommend the resolution favorably?
So move. Conway.
Moved by Councilman Conway. Is there a second?
Second, Bullock.
Okay, Chair McCray, I'm a yes. Councilman Bullock,
Yes.
Councilman Conway,
Aye.
Councilman Dorsey is absent. Councilwoman Porter,
Yes.
Councilman Torrance,
Aye.
and Councilman Schleifer.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has passed with a vote of 6 to 0. The committee will report the resolution at the next city council meeting. We are going to take a brief recess before we come to Bill 21-0049. That recess will be for about 3 minutes. Thank you.